All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel talk about how to collaborate as a product team. When I posted this on LinkedIn, I really said, like, in my opinion, this is a meetup not just for people that are dealing with content and writing and how to better integrate themselves in the team, but also for other people from other professions to think about how they can best collaborate as well. So first, I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. So yeah, maybe say your name, how long you've been at Wix, what your profession is, and what product you work on. Go for it.
So hi, I'm Kfir. I work at Wix for 7 years, and I work in Promote, SEO, marketing tools, all that. And then I had the chance to work, to see the evolution of the last 7 years. So we work closely with UX writers and obviously all the rest.
And what's your profession?
I'm a UX designer.
Ooh, thank you.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Sarah. I've been at Wix for almost 8 years. And I work in the Showcase team. We're a company of all products that help users showcase their work, whether it be in a pro gallery or a portfolio or a photo album. And I'm leading the product for Wix Showcase. And actually, I've been here for so long, I actually was in marketing for a few years as well, so as a product marketer, and then shifted over to be a product about 4 years ago. Been there ever since.
Thanks, Sarah.
Oh, you have.
I'm Tova. I'm a UX writer and the team lead inside of Premium Services. I've been at Wix for almost 3 years. And at Premium, we deal with all the premium plans, domains, business emails, accounts, a lot of things that have to do with money and credit cards and upgrading and financial relationships with our users.
I am Asaf. I'm a Fed developer in Wix for almost 7 years. And I'm working with Tova in Premium Services. And I'm a front-end developer.
Thanks, everyone. Welcome. So I have here a really long list of questions. By the way, these are questions that we compiled already and reduced the number by looking for repeated questions or things that we found that where there were patterns. And I think some of these questions are directed to different professions, but I'm going to start with one that it may seem like, Asaf, it's directed to you for developers, but I actually think it's something that we can answer all of us. The question is, in many companies, designers or product managers are frequently the intermediary between UX writers and developers. Do you think that's a good thing? Or do you believe that UX writers should work more directly and closely with developers? How do you ensure good collaboration and understanding between UX writers and developers?
I need a second to think about it.
Yeah.
But I don't really think that a product should be the mediator between the UX writer and the front-end developer. I think everyone should do his profession. UX writer should do his work, and the product needs to do his work. They're the experts, and I'm interested to know the final result, and I want to ensure that I provide the right infrastructure to provide right infrastructure to provide the needs.
So I think that in a general, product people often are the mediator for everything. I feel like that sometimes we fall into that, case where we're just constantly trying to, close ties and try to help people, make things move fast. So we end up kind of falling into that. role by default everywhere. But I think that one of the things actually recently that we've implemented to kind of make sure that writers and everyone are collaborating all the time is the way we have sprints every week. And every sprint, there's some sort of task, a big task that we're going over. And now those tasks have, subtasks within them. And the task itself needs to have an owner. And I think that once we've decided that the owner wouldn't always be the product, that it could also be a developer, or it could also be a UX, or it could be a designer. The product owner, or the task owner, then needs to really collaborate on their own. And we're there for the sprint to kind of check in and to get status and help when needed. But if they're the owner, then we're ensuring that they will then collaborate. Because it's really on them and their responsibility that it goes through. So we try to make sure that in every single sprint or every other sprint, everyone on the team gets assigned a task or section, we call it, so they have that responsibility kind of just built in. So that really helped us.
I also agree that with Segev, and maybe it's because I'm biased because I get to work with him directly, but I personally find that things move a lot faster when I don't have an intermediary, when I don't have a person in between me trying to explain what's like Segev or any other Fed says to me, and when I try to have a product manager explain my side. So any kind of like communication that you have directly with the person that you're going to be working with is really the best way to get things done and to get things done right, and actually ends a lot of ping pong. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the more you work together as team without feeling that someone is not part of the loop or like not in the main gang, it shouldn't be like that. And we see like the product quality, like it just gets better and better once they all involve. Like, they can talk like face to face without having someone or like other people kind of like in between.
I'm going to add that in my experience, a lot of writers can tend to be intimidated to speak about things that they feel that they don't understand, if there are technical aspects or things that they're not sure about the terminology. But I actually think that, and I'm addressing the like last part of the question of how do you ensure good collaboration. I think Sarah actually proposed something great. But I think that the more that we understand simply one another's experience, the better we can communicate. And I don't think actually the terminology or like the technical jargon is like the most important part of it. And I can give you guys an example of a meeting I had today when I met with a couple of developers who are helping solve an issue that we're having with content, which is showing incorrectly in production, okay? We didn't understand why. Why isn't it appearing? And for them, they didn't really understand the severity of the issue. Like, they were like, oh, all you need to do is X, Y, and Z. And then the moment that I just explained to them the experience of the writers and how far the implication of the issue, like what it actually means for our users and the user experience, and how we are experiencing also this issue on our end, they were like, wow, we had no idea that this is actually the case. Like, we're just looking at the code and there's a blip. For us, it's like, okay, there's like a small thing. But when they understand actually how it's impacting our work, the time commitment that we have and the work that we're doing, and they understand also how it's impacting user experience, then they can really help us think about ways to solve the issue better. So just in my experience, don't be intimidated by the words. Okay, we have such good questions here. All right, this is something that came up in a number of presentations, and I think it's something that I never hear it. Everyone is always asking it, and I actually don't think it is specific to UX writers. Here's the question, and I think it's relevant for all of you. It often happens that product teams are reluctant to involve UX writers or content designers early in the design process. However, when writers are involved only at the end, it can be really hard to make sense of the flow and the logic, and it can be hard to understand what we need to write. If writers were involved more in the beginning, what guiding questions do you think it would be helpful for them to ask? So I actually think we can break this up into two different questions. One is maybe how do you convince your product teams to involve you, and like what should that look like? And then the second question is when they are involved, then in the beginning, like what should they be asking in order to understand better what their role is and how they can help deliver a great product?
So I think that first of all, it's super important to be involved as early as possible. And we've been, I mean, like, if I take a look, like, in the past, where we used to work this way, like, oh, we just need, like, text, like, easy. But with time, we understood the actual benefit of having all of us in a very early stage, so we can all be in line, and they also understand like behind it, like what's the mission, what's the goal. Maybe they can come up with a creative idea that they can really help, and with time we understood how it helps all of us. I mean, I learned so much because we worked like that for a while, and I think it's super important. And regarding how. Wait, are we also answering the second question?
Jump around, go for it.
Just like how to promote this kind of behavior where in a place that don't have that. I think it obviously it's not like a clear cut. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I wish we could do like that and it will happen. But I think, first of all, acknowledging the work that the other ones did, but then slowly kind of like pave the way to be as early as possible. And maybe intentionally asking questions beforehand so they understand, oh, maybe she should know the goal and the mission before we start working on it.
Thanks, Kavir.
Yeah.
I totally agree with the goal and the mission. I think that's just like for everyone. Everyone should know that. That should be constantly pushed throughout the entire project. That's really why we're doing it. So it should be clear. I think it's just like it's a shame that we need to convince people. To me, that's crazy. I mean, it's obvious that everyone should be at the beginning. There should be a kickoff. Everyone should be aligned. There just should be no reason why anyone should be brought in at the end, let alone a content writer. But that being said, of course, I know it happens. It's definitely something that our team really try not to, and I can only say what kind of made me realize why that's such a mistake. And I think it was just from understanding. I think we did. I was in the logo maker at Wix, and we did usability testing. And this is when it just like really hit me in the face, and I was just like, I was left just like speechless. When I just saw live how a user was struggling just by a small word. And it was, to me, that seemed so minor, and they just couldn't get over it, that I think it was like full commercial usage rights. And she was like, what are commercial usage rights, though? I'm not going to buy this yet. And it was just this like whole conversation about this one line, and it was keeping her from buying, which was our goal. We wanted them to buy a logo. And so that just like hit it home for me, that this needs to be, that this matters almost as much as a bug. That the word needs to be considered almost as much as a bug from getting to be going to the package picker. So that really was like the main moment that hit me, and I think that showing the user voice and the issues that come around with users, to prove that is I think one of the ways that one could convince, sadly, to use that word, other people on the team that everyone should be at the beginning of the project. It's just crucial for our success.
Yeah, obviously I agree with everything that was said before, but I think every discipline comes with its own unique perspective. And somebody very wise once told me that our job as UX writers specifically is to be, the watchdog for the user. Every different discipline has their own KPIs, right? Like, so there's business KPIs, there's user KPIs. And as a UX writer, like we bring, because we are there to simplify really complex ideas, to get people, to really be the tour guide, to take their hand to lead them through it, like we need to remember that that's our job, and that's something unique that other disciplines, maybe they don't see it as clearly as we see it. We're where obviously the business KPI is important to us, but the user experience at the end of the day, how we speak to the user, how we get them from point A to point B is hugely important. And sometimes it's overlooked when you get stuck in other details. So I think always reminding other people on your team that that's the unique perspective you give, and also that's our discipline, that's our skill. It's to take all of these complicated ideas and simplify them and tell the user, like, the user's not going to understand this unless I can tell it to them simply. And if you wait until the very end and you design this beautiful flow, but actually you're using maybe a bunch of like hieroglyphics or icons that like the user's not going to know, then it's too late. You've missed the mark completely on the business KPI and the user KPI.
I want to. Sorry, can I jump to? There was like a second part, which is okay. Now we're doing things right, and the writer is involved from the beginning. So like this writer now has never been involved in the beginning. What are some important questions that they should be asking or thinking about now that they're involved in the beginning? Like, what does this experience look like?
I think it goes back to the goal. It's always about the goal and the mission for what we're trying to do. Because at the end of the day, I mean, what is the KPI here? I think at the end of the day, that is the most important question to ask. Because if we're not doing anything towards that KPI, then there's really no, there's no understanding there. So I believe that no matter it should be just like printed on the wall. So that's really the most important thing that I think anyone should ask when entering a project late, is to that's the context we should know first, is the KPIs.
Well, I'll say, yeah, like once you know the main KPI, the goals, the problem that we are about to tackle, I mean, it helps very much, like in the beginning, obviously, and throughout the whole journey, and then also the success, like the happy moment after launching the project, it makes it much more fun and makes sense.
I also think it's important, like we talk a lot about, like a lot of people, when you go to a kickoff, a lot of people will just show you, not a lot, that's really, I shouldn't say that, but sometimes we get really caught up in the happy flows and the success moments. But I think as a UX writer, when you're first coming into it, into the project, is to really zoom out and try to imagine every like kind of situation that a user could get stuck in, not just the happy flow, okay? Like we want everybody to go through the happy flow, but what if they do this, or what if they do that? To try to anticipate the pitfalls and really, really ask those tough questions, okay? What happens if the user like puts in a letter when you can only put in a number? But to really try to zoom out and see not just the happy flow that sometimes you'll be presented with.
Totally agree. I think, like, going to repeat what you already said, it's all about KPIs. You need to ask, like, what do you want to achieve? Is it conversion, retention? I don't know. Like, it's all kind of like the product need to define the KPI, and there's like UX writer like need to understand it. Maybe competitor overview, maybe how things are doing, like in your competitors or in other places.
Another thing I'll add is also to ask, especially if you have a dev in the room, is to really try to understand that if there's any technical limitations, what you can do, what you can't do, where there's some wiggle room, because that can really change the experience of what you're trying to explain, and it can change the product altogether.
I'd also like to add, I think that let's say we do get to this point where the content writer is added at the end. Obviously, there's been a mistake here, and that should be like a moment to teach, I think, that this is probably wrong, and also to show the value that you bring that should have been considered in the beginning. And I can tell you from experience, even just today, I had a meeting today, and we were really at the beginning of a project, and our lovely content writer is actually here, Rachel. She showed research of competitors and how users are writing it in support, and just parts of the research that we really should have done as product people and as everyone on the team had known, and it was just so critical. Before we started dev, to learn those things. Obviously this was before, but if we had found out all these things at the end of the process, this would have been awful to know that they're not even using or not thinking about it this way, or this is how the competitor's doing, and we would have been off. So I think it was the fact you should show, if these things happen, I think it's important to show your value, and then it won't happen again, let's hope.
I'm just going to add, first of all, I think these are great. Thank you guys for your input. I also think if you're like new to this and you've never been added in the beginning of the process, I think in addition to KPIs and understanding the goal and understanding like where you want to go, you should also be thinking about how you want to work with your team and asking questions about what are the best ways to work together. And this kind of, I think, ties back into Pamela and Ayelet's presentations, where they were really talking about how do we learn what the best ways are to communicate with one another during this sprint or during this process. So that when I make a change or you make a change, we can be in line so that I'm getting feedback and you're giving feedback and we're all getting feedback and talking to one another. So I think this is also a really important question to ask, or at least to be thinking about. What is something, as a product team, we all work together, yeah? And I think there's always this, this feeling that like you are the only one on your team who really knows like what you do. So there's a question here for everyone on the panel. What is something that you wish that everyone from other professions on your team knew about you and your profession?
First of all, I think it's a great question, because I think we all struggle with this. Like, oh, but they don't know, like why, and then it creates this like frustration. I can say from my end, to better understand the craft, like what's behind the actual outcome. So the more they know it, the better, and I feel more confident that I can be more open with the people in my team. And I can see a great example with Figma. Like before that, we couldn't send like messages and the comments. So having it, like being in one place, so I know that the people I work with, they kind of like got to know, oh, how it works. How do you sketch? How does a component works? And therefore we managed to learn about each other much more. And last thing, I think that when giving a feedback, even if it's like they just say like, oh, you know what, it's great, we are ready to go. There's still so much to do to prepare for dev, and so even if people might think like, okay, but we said like everything is okay, so just ship it. But no, there's like a lot of things behind that, so it will be as clear as possible for development. So yeah, the more they know my craft, the better I can communicate also and estimate my time, and it makes sense to the rest of the people.
So we're just gonna go on a line here. I think that it's really important to say that I can assume, I speak for myself as a product person, I care so much about the motivation. I think it's not always so clear about how important it is that when I bring up an idea or I'm showing an idea that I have, I care so much about the reaction of my team, and I want everyone to love it. Like just so much, and think I'm brilliant, and just come with me, and I'm this like big leader through the desert, and follow me. I'll find out, I'll find the water. That's what I want people to feel. But it's such a big responsibility sometimes, and it sometimes seems like we try so hard to show that we know what's best, and we've got this, and we've thought of this idea from research, and because we're amazing, genius product people, but sometimes we don't know. And I think that it's really, sometimes I feel like I wish I could just ask everyone to bring up their ideas too, and we could collaborate and just decide together what's best. Like, I don't always want to be the leader of the team as much as I feel like we're supposed to be. And I think that it's, I can imagine others would also love other people's ideas and to feel, welcome to add those and give feedback if something doesn't seem right, and give another alternate route, because we never really know. So no one knows. So it's best that we all try to give it a shot together as a team.
I honestly feel like I wish some other disciplines sometimes knew how much we slave over finding the right word. Like, we don't just throw stuff out there, you know, like we do a lot of research. We have a lot of feedback sessions within other writers, within other disciplines. And sometimes I feel like I sit in a meeting and they're like, well, why did you say it that way? And it was like, well, I just went through 35,000 iterations and I asked users and I listened to user calls and I asked some other person on another team. Like, we're not just like, oh, we woke up this morning and we decided to use the word activate. You know, it was great. No, actually, we did 6 weeks worth of research and we didn't just like make this decision just because it looked good on paper. And yeah, sometimes I do find myself in meetings sometimes and be like, but we've gone over this already.
It's for UX designers, wish them to know how much time like we invest in making your design pixel perfect. Like, it takes so much time. and that, no, I do not see the difference between font weights, really. No, sorry.
I think that was a really great question. So thank you. I don't know who submitted it, but like, thank you to whoever submitted it. And maybe you should, I recommend you take this back to your teams and have like a sit down exercise.
Such a good idea.
What would you want other people to know about the work that you do? I think it can be fun with alcohol. Okay. Someone asked, I'm going to just check in with time. We're good. Someone asked for content folks who are coming from a different realm, who were working on different types of content and never really worked as part of a product team. Or I guess, I'm assuming for content folks who kind of like were jumping on all different kinds of projects and were never really embedded or incorporated into feeling like they were part of a product team. What tips do you have for how they can really like join the team? What tips do you have for ways that they can embed themselves and be more connected and work better as a team?
I'm going to start here in the middle. I know we're breaking lines here. So before I worked at Wix, I wasn't a UX writer, but I was a writer. I always worked at startups, so I did a lot of everything, mostly marketing, really, but a lot of everything. And I didn't really work with a product team until I came to Wix. So it was a jump for me to be able to like learn how to get into a product team. And honestly, I did it by asking a ton of questions and really like just getting over myself. Like earlier today, like Ayelet said, there's no such thing as a stupid question, and it's true. There's no such thing as a stupid question, and just really being visible. Like really, like when you're sitting in something you don't understand, like don't assume like later. Okay, I'll figure it out later. I'll figure it out. Just ask, because people will answer. Like that's always been that. Like other disciplines I have found, they really want you to know more. Like we just said that, right? We just answered a question about that. They want you to know more about their process and how it works. So to really just not be shy, like any kind of like, I know it can be intimidating to work with developers or products or UX design, but to really put that on the side and ask your questions and invite yourself to meetings. I did that a lot. Invite yourself to meetings just so people like really see you. And then also like another side of it is, it sounds like, but like also remember the personal side, you know, like go for coffee with these people, like go grab a beer on the roof or whatever it is in your company that you guys do for fun. But like build those relationships both like professionally and personally, and then it'll come a lot easier in my experience.
I just have a recent experience right now where our team is moving to kind of a new product in a new realm that we've never seen before. And it's really scary. And I feel like we're all just like brand new and having to really get used to something new. And when we were going over what features we'd work on, they said to us, you know, we want you to do this feature because you've no idea how it works. And this is exactly what our users are going to feel like. So you guys are like the perfect people to do this. And then I just kind of like, I think that that's a really important point, because at the end of the day, it's actually the best position to be in, to be brand new, because you don't have all the like crazy talk around it and the design issues and the dev issues and this doesn't work here. You're just like the most pure being right now, and therefore you can give the best stance because you are just clean of all the issues and the tired feelings around it and how does it work and this won't work this way. So use that as strength. This is kind of like the superpower. You can come in and be like a real user who can come at it as a completely pure way. So it's actually kind of nice.
Actually, you couldn't agree more. I mean, like especially the coffee part, coffee, cakes, like whatever this is, like the more you get to know like the other people, before asking questions that will benefit you per se, but just to understand better the product manager, the UX, and by showing interest for these people, like the people you work with, first of all, they get to know you. But also you like you slowly can understand the dynamic, like what's their motivation, what's important for them, so you can then understand better the dynamic and what's your role, like instead of coming from like within, trying to come from like understanding the surrounding.
From a technical perspective, like talk to your front-end person, get familiar with the library that use, know the capabilities, know what the limitations. Ask them, how can he help you? Like maybe provide a playground as we do in Premium, like store books and stuff like this. Like get to know what you can get.
Thanks. I'm going to do a last question. I didn't get through all these. It's really unfortunate, I just want to say, because some of these are great. But we just don't have time, so maybe we'll be able to take some time and answer these in a doc? Am I saying something I shouldn't say? Okay. Well, we'll see about that. But I really like this question because we all get into arguments and disagreements and find ourselves, no matter how much we're trying to have an open mind and work together, we do find ourselves in disagreements and arguments. What is one of the biggest disagreements you've had with someone on your team? And but the ones that you've overcome. So how did you overcome it? How did you handle it? And I really think it's a really good question because as much as we are like taking our Figma file and working in it really well, or as much as we're like mapping the feedback and categorizing it and thinking about how we can like digest it and react to it in the most productive way, sometimes we just disagree, and then we still need to deliver a product, and what do we do? So, what do you guys have? What do you guys have for me?
That was a loaded question. That was a toughie.
I have a go-to line. Don't know if I want to share out loud, but it's a safe space. I always just say, let's test it. Just have to test it. It's just like, that's what tests are for. So at the end of once you kind of open up that door for let's test it, it just suddenly relaxes a bit, I feel like, because then we give space to both decisions. But yeah.
I'm just going to say, I think you kind of like didn't answer the question.
All right, so this one time, this one content writer I just couldn't stand. No, I do have, I have a few in my head. There was once time that literally the entire content flow that we'd worked on, we'd built it, everything was fine, and then the head of company returned from vacation and did not like the content. So that was really hard. I was in the middle of the situation, and what happened was we ended up just closing ourselves in a room all together, and we went through each screen and reviewed each one, and we just didn't leave until everyone felt good. And there was a lot of let's test it talk that got through it, but I think that it was really hard because I think at the end of the day, someone needs to make a decision, and there needs to be a clear decision maker in the room. And I think at the end of the day, it's really hard when it gets to that. I think there isn't like I think there are people who can say that just the product makes the call. I don't think it's just that black and white. I think at the end of the day, there needs to be an agreement. But if it gets to a point where it's just everyone's on either side, then I do think that the product needs to make a call, but there does need to be a test that needs to be done. Whether it's first, maybe it's later, But you got to make that promise and stick to it. That's the issue with saying that line. You really do. They remember. So test it after.
There's, I think we all have those products that stick out in our mind. Like, I wish we would have done this better. I wish we would have done that. If I would have done it now, I would have done it completely different, of course, like the whole experience. But I remember specifically one product that I worked on. It was really difficult and really complicated. Like I said, in Premium, we deal with a lot of sensitive areas, like credit cards and payments and when people are going to be charged and how they're going to be charged and how often. And we were working on a really complicated flow, update payment method after pay now. And the conversation there was incredibly different. We were asking the user to do a lot of things in one short space, and they needed to understand a lot of things. And I just didn't agree with the way that we were presenting the information at all. Like, did not agree. I really felt that we needed to flip some things around. We needed to not use radio buttons. We needed to use this. We needed to ask a question and not like give it as a statement. And it got heated. Like, it escalated. It escalated very quickly. My team lead got involved. Everybody's team lead got involved. And we kind of had to come to a place that at the end of the day, between me, the product, and the UX designer, because we weren't agreeing, we had to go back to our separate corners, and then we had to come back and tell each other, like, okay, let's remind ourselves what's motivating, like what's the motivation here, because we let our egos get in the way. And I think that can happen a lot. Sometimes ego can get in the way, and sometimes you need to retreat. You need to take a deep breath and remember that it's about the user. And it's about the user. It's also about understanding what technically we can do and what we can't do, and knowing that everybody, and blatantly saying, like, I'm going to compromise on this. What are you going to compromise? So it does come from asking a lot of tough questions sometimes that you could feel uncomfortable, but you're not doing yourself any favors or anybody else any favors if you don't ask those uncomfortable questions. And if you don't remember, like, at the end of the day, to come back and think about what's motivating you, and what's motivating the team around you.
It's going to be boring because I'm working 7 years in Wix, and sorry, it's not like I don't have one juicy thing to tell you about. Like, I think it's boring, but it's like it ends up in a good communication. Like, I never escalated anything. It's everything can be solved in good communication.
I have one. It was actually not too long ago, and it wasn't too dramatic. I mean, it might be on the cusp of boring, but it was something that we need to overcome. So in that case, we had sort of a really big project and a very tight deadline. And we did work together, product manager, a writer, me, and it went okay. Stressful, but we worked fine. Part of this project, like a very small part, was coming up with a name for a widget. And it might seem like, okay, just a name for a widget. But this name was such a, it needed such a great effort to crack and to find the right terminology for that. And the writer I was working with, let's call her Maurice, and so she already, like, we went through like so many iterations, and we know that it blocks us from move forward with the project, because people have like so many opinions and like this is negative, that sounds like but like eventually she initiated a meeting where she called it like finalizing this widget name. And we were sitting together. So it was Maurice, me, product manager, and sort of management. And she was very excited. She did like another research, and she came up with like 3 ideas that were, like, the research that was done there was incredible. Pros and cons, and it was really like, and she was excited. Like, okay, guys, I'm gonna show you these like 3 candidates, and we're gonna decide it now, and like in this 30 minutes. And we, like, she presented it, and people were like, no, yeah, I don't know, maybe, like, they gave unhelpful feedback like they didn't say what to do or like suggesting something. They would just say like, that sounds a bit negative. That's and I could see her emotions, and also like looking like thinking about the timeline, about the people. So in some point, I kind of like took kind of like a step back and looked at the situation, and I think like in that moment, I understood how we can just like put the emotions aside and be practical. So I said like, okay, guys, first of all, amazing work. Like this is amazing. I mean, we couldn't even think about like how crazy was that like to find this name. So everyone in the room agreed. So this was like kind of like a bit of like a positive thing, like because people kind of like got a bit cringy, and eventually just saying, okay, we can have like another 2 months. We have 2 months. Can we do it? Like or not? No, we don't have. Okay, so we need to come up with the solution. Oh, but this solution. Okay, but what? So. Do we want to come up with this name to decide in the 8 minutes left? Yes, no, yes, no. Eventually, they understood that, okay, let's make a decision and do that. And everyone was happy. But it was like putting the emotions aside, but also see like the practical aspect of that, like timeline and to understand the risks that we can have another year to think about and to brainstorm. But we sometimes don't have it, and we need to say it, I guess, sometimes. Sorry for the long...
Don't apologize. This was the juicy parts. This is what they're asking for. So we do have time for some questions if there are people here that want to ask anything that they have on their minds. I would love to take questions from the live audience or from people on Zoom who we have on this amazing screen in front of us. Don't be shy. It's all about communication. Hold on.
You kind of mentioned it, but one of the things, my name's Adina Rabinowitz. I work at Accessibility as a UX writer. One of the things that we didn't mention is the cost of not including a UX writer at the beginning, that sometimes changes made later on are much more financially expensive to have a developer change things. Instead of changing it in one place, it might now be in 5 different places. They might have moved ahead, way ahead in the development, and going back and redoing the work is way more expensive than doing it right at the beginning. So it's one of the most important reasons to include a UX writer from the very beginning of a process.
Thanks for the comment. Anyone else? Hold on. I think you talked enough, Ayelet, but okay. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
So I think everybody's been really nice about like collaborating with writers and all that. But at the end of the day, is it hard for you? Do you feel to let go of like things that you really believe in? Like there is a content decision that you are really like, you know, that's what you want, but the content writer thinks otherwise. Is it easy for you to let them have that ownership?
Excellent question. Such a good question. Do you have an answer?
I mean, I'm a content writer. I'm
Oh,
waiting
true.
and with bated breath on what everybody else is going to answer.
I always feel like it's really hard, especially for me, because I am American and I speak English, and sometimes I feel like people think I know English, and I don't. But sometimes I feel like I do. You know, like I speak this, and I know it's right. I have so many times felt that I've been kind of like weirdly given this superpower that I can speak English, and therefore I, should know what's best. And I even think about that myself sometimes. So definitely, I think I have this like ego about English, even though I'm not like trained in any way to have been able to make decisions that way. Yeah, it's really hard. I think it's like, it really does depend a lot, and it depends on who you're working with, and also depend the way that they collaborate with you. I think it has a lot to do with just sensitivities. It really reminds me of the way that you give feedback. The way that you bring up your point can make all the difference. If you demand it, it'll get it won't feel as good. If you show it in a research, it'll feel much better. if you kind of ask what they think about it, if you come at it in that way, I think that it really, at the end of the day, that's what matters, not necessarily the idea itself. So yeah, I definitely had situations where I felt like someone was just kind of like demanding that the content be some way, and then I felt the need to also demand that it shouldn't. And when it gets demanded in both ways, then it leads to conflict. But if we all remember that we're in it for the users, and that we just need to kind of like take a deep breath, step back, and come back, and show it that way, then I guess that's a solution. But yeah, it sucks when that happens.
I don't think there's any children here. Tova, did you want to say something? No. Okay. We have yeah, that's it? It's a comment, not a question. So that's it, we're out of time. Guys, we're out of time. Guys and gals and everyone else. We're out of time, but I really want to thank everyone on the panel for, one, being so open and honest. We asked some hard questions, and thank you for giving some really honest answers. I think it's super helpful. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to Ayelet and to Pamela for building amazing decks on feedback. Thank you to Mika for making sure that all of the logistics and everything is organized. And to Jenny, who couldn't be here in person. Yes, sorry. I always need to plug things. The next meetup is going to be in June. We do one each quarter. So the next meetup is in June, so stay tuned. Check out our YouTube channel. And hope to see you here when the weather is warmer. Thank you so much, everyone.